Good morning. Today we'll be working more on free response problems involving box plots. This is on page 57 of your note spiral. Excuse me, page 58. So turn to page 58 of your note spiral. And this is a FRQ problem from 2000. You can actually find the answers online. Once again, box plots are probably the most important and the easiest ones to use in all of College Board. Take a moment and enter the flexibility rating in one of your calculator columns, the frequency for middle-aged men in another column, and the frequency of young adult men in another column. You can't see that in my calculator, but there's my, in column 4, I have the flexibility rating. In column 5, I have the frequency for middle-aged men. In column 6, which you can't see, I also have the frequency of young adult men. Please do not sort the data. You only sort the data if you're working with a stem plot. If you sort the data here, it won't match up. And I'll explain that a little more in just a moment. So here we go. 500 randomly selected middle-aged men and 500 randomly selected young adult men were rated on a scale from 1 to 10. So this is their rating right here, 1 to 10. On their physical flexibility, 10 being the most flexible. Their ratings appear in the frequency table below. For example, 17 middle-aged men had a flexibility rating of 1. So what they're saying is this 17 means that there's 17 men that had a flexibility rating of 1. Here it says there are 4 young adult men with a flexibility rating of 1. If I go all the way down to 10, we have flexibility rating of 10, the most flexible. 9 of the middle age were most flexible, whereas 39 of the young adult men were the most flexible. So the first thing it asks us to do is display these data graphically so that the flexibility of middle-aged men and young adult men can be easily compared. They really didn't tell me what I could use. I could use any type of graph. However, I'm just letting you know that the box plot is probably the fastest to draw. You can use a histogram, you could use a stem plot. Stem plots have tons of information, but if you did that, there's 500 data points, so therefore you'd have to have 500 leaves, and that would take you quite a while. So good luck with that. So I'm going to go with a box plot because it's nice and quick. So to display the graphically, I'm going to go back to my calculator, and I have my data here. I'm going to go to a clear screen, second quit. Do this real quickly. Please press the Y equals button. It's up on the upper left. Make sure you don't have anything in Y equals because it can mess things up. Then I'm going to go to second stat plot and press enter. All right. I'm going to make sure my stat plot is on. Then I'm going to drop down and I'm going to select a box plot that shows outliers, which is the one with the dots. Now, my flexibility rating was in column 4, so I'm going to press second and then the column number, which was 4. All right, now I'm moving down. I'm going to go ahead and get my frequency rating for middle-aged men. So second, and my column number for middle-aged men was 5. And then that's all done with that one. So we now have all the information in for middle-aged men. Now I'm going to go up and do the young adults. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight plot 2, press enter, make sure it's on. In my case it is. I'm going to arrow over to the box plot with the dots where it's flashing, and I'm going to press enter again, make sure I have the right one. Now, this is a little big, be careful with this. The flexibility rating is in column 4, so second 4. For me, you may have it in column 1 or 2 or 3, but wherever your flexibility rating, that's your X list, and now we need the freq list, or the frequency, and in my case, the young adult men is in column 6. So second followed by the number 6, and press enter. And then when I press zoom 9, I get both box plots, and that's pretty awesome. So both of them are right there, and I generally sketch them out first just kind of the way they're spaced. And you notice these line up, this lines up, and you can kind of eyeball everything else. Plus, if we go to the trace function right here, I can go ahead and call out the values. So my minimum value was a 1, and we know that there was no value below 1 because that was the lowest rating. There is a 4 for quartile 1. The median is 6. The third quartile is 7, and then the max was 10. That's for middle age. For young adult, the max was 10. The third quartile was 8. The median was 7. Quartile 1 is 5. And the minimum was 1. All right, so that gave us the information for the plot. And so you need to have a plot that looks like this, and I highly recommend that you take a moment and pause this and start writing. But make sure you always label things. Make sure you have middle-aged men and young men. Make sure you have a scale and a flexibility rating. If you're not very comfortable with the scale, then just put like 1, 5, and 10, and then you can go back and label the actual values for min, Q1, median, Q3, and max. Label the actual values, and they'll give you credit for that. But if you're missing a label, you lose 25% of your score. If you're missing the label and the scale, you probably will receive no points. So it is really important to have that there. So you might want to pause this and make it and draw that. Based on an examination of your graphical display, write a few sentences comparing the flexibility of middle-aged men with the flexibility of young adult men. At this point, they're asking me to cuss and BS. And then remember, whenever we have two graphs, we have to actually make sure that we have comparison put in there. So the median flexibility scores differ by 1, with young adults men's scores being higher at 7, while the middle-aged men is at 6, which suggests that men have more flexibility than middle-aged men. All right, so young men are more flexible than middle-aged men. And notice I was specific. I actually gave values 7 and 6, and then I talked about their flexibility, which puts it in context. The distribution of middle-aged men is reasonably symmetric. Now, that's somewhat arguable, but I looked at it and go, oh, the median's almost in the middle. It's not really, but it's almost. So if you felt like you wanted to say that it's slightly skewed to the left, you could have done that. The reason I know that it's if it's directly in the middle, it would have been symmetric. Slightly skewed to the left because this goes from 1 to 6, which means that it has 5 values below, and it only has 4 values above. So yeah, it's a little bit skewed. Now, the young adult men is substantially more skewed because it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values below and only 1, 2, 3 above. All right? 1, 2, 3 above and the median, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 below the median. So it's substantially more skewed than the middle-aged men. So the distribution of middle-aged men is reasonably symmetric, while that of young men is skewed to the left. The upper 50% of the young men, okay, so the upper 50%, so in other words, the median up, is higher than the 75% of the middle-aged men, because Q3 lines up here. This is 75%, and this is the upper 50%. Middle-aged men and young men flexibility scores both have a range of 10. That's actually a typo. That should say 9, because range is 10 minus 1. So it should say 9, and fall within the same value. Though the values are higher for, and it should say higher for young adult men, the interquartile range for both distributions is 3. 8 minus 5 is 3, and 7 minus 4 is 3. And once I've done that, I've talked about center, I've talked about shape, and I've talked about spread, and that would be a full credit response. Hopefully that will help you with that. Thank you.